Okay. All right. So who am I? If you have been to any of my sessions yesterday, you already have seen this slide. If you did not, my name is Prasanna Adavi. I work for a company called EPMA. We are based out of Houston, Texas. We are one of the premier PPM consulting groups over there. Okay, you have my contact details there and my company contact details as well. The only thing I would like to highlight is I run a podcast as a personal initiative. So we have several MVPs and key people talk on it. We regularly interview people. So it might be a good thing for you to follow. It's free, no charge, no cost. Okay, so what's the agenda for today? We'll take a quick look at what is release management for people who are trying to learn about it. I'll try to put it in the context of what we are talking about today. There is a lot of times there is an overlap as to what release management is, what project management is, how do those two domains interact with each other? Are they the same? There's a lot of confusion in terms of maybe they are the same and maybe they are not. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Just look at the big picture as to how the overall, in an organization, when several processes are going on simultaneously, how does the big picture look like? And then we'll define our scenario just like a good project manager or a release manager. We're going to define what our requirements for our demo are, and then I'll go through the demo. Okay, nothing really complicated. And then we'll do some Q&A. Okay? All right, so what is release management? I got this out of the ITIL glossary, their definition of release management. So just to read it out, the process responsible for planning, scheduling, and controlling the build, test, and deployment of releases, and for delivering new functionality required by the business while protecting the integrity of existing systems and services. For somebody like me, that is the expression I had the first time. I'm like, what are you talking about? So in a simple manner, if we organize the entire sentence into a simple diagram, that's what it is. Plan, build, test, release, support, and close, and monitor this entire process in a reasonable and meaningful way. But the problem is, isn't that so very similar to project management? If you are using a waterfall methodology or even an agile methodology, pretty much it is the same cycle. You plan, you scope requirements, you design, develop, test, and go live, right? So this is a big picture that I was talking about. Release process, the way I have learned about it, the way I see it in many organizations work, project management is a subset of release management. Projects are, so you manage projects from a definite start to definite end. Release management is an ongoing process. Yes, it does have a per release start and finish, but the process itself, the framework, the methodology pervades everything. So you could be a company with multiple systems. So there is SAP going on, there is project server implementations going on, there is other ERP systems going on, there is internal Office 365 implementation going on. Whatever it is, there is multiple things going on. I'm just using IT as an example because that's my main background, but you can apply it to anything you use. The problem is there are multiple things going on. How do you keep everything in balance? So let's say there are changes. In fact, we ran into this scenario I think sometime last year. So I'll take Project Server as an example, right? There were several Project Server implementations going on, and we all had one test box, right? So I would make changes. I would add like a lookup table, simple lookup table. Somebody else would see it. The users are testing it, and they're like, where did this lookup table come from? Then my coworker adds another field. Then I see it. I'm like, who needs this field? Delete it. So there was constant struggle going on because there was no coordination in terms of what each one of us are doing, what are we aiming towards. The solution in that case should have been their user text testing should not have happened during my development cycle. Both user testing should have been synchronized so that we all know we have released it for user testing and no changes are supposed to be made until after the testing is complete. So things like that. That's a minor example. When you're talking about bigger ERP systems and stuff like that, it gets even more complicated. Anybody work with SAP? SAP background? Right. So you at least have transports that can go from one system to another, but it's minor. I have been an SAP project manager for 3 years. So a minor issue in one of the transport could mess up the entire process, right? Anytime SAP go live is there, we work through the night. Always. It's always, there's a cutover weekend. It's the entire weekend, 24 hours, no break. So the question is, how do you manage all that stuff when you are working with so many different systems? Okay, and by the way, the other thing I didn't mention in the slide is it's not always the big stuff going on. If there were all just projects, then it would be easy. Okay, we can say these are 5 projects. You go do this, align their timelines and go fine. But there is projects, there is support, there is operations, there is ongoing maintenance, a lot of stuff going on. So that's another part of the another variable in the equation. Anyway, the problem we are trying to solve is obviously multiple systems, multiple changes going on at the same time. The other question is, okay, now let's say we do all agree that they all need to be managed properly. A lot of times it is done manually, Excel sheets, Word documents somewhere. Somebody has Lotus Notes calendar set up to match, to give them reminders, that kind of stuff. Or you could actually go purchase, there's a lot of good release management tools, I'm sure. But the problem is, it's another set of tools you're introducing into the company. If there is a good reason for it, go for it. But for, let's say, medium-sized companies, somebody who don't want to invest in new tools, and let's assume if you are already using Project and Project Server, how can you take advantage of that to monitor this whole thing? That is our problem statement. Okay? Those are our requirements. What we are trying to do in a release management process, I will define at a very high level. Again, release management experts, don't pick on me on this one. So there are some very, very key elements that are required for the whole process to work. Okay, the first thing is we need a tool set to track all these releases, in which in our case we are going to try and use Project and Project Server for that. The other question is allow for the maturity of using the tool. Whether people are, let's assume everybody is using Project Server or Project Online, not everybody is going to be a beautiful, very highly skilled project manager. They are going to just probably pop on schedules, task lists, all over the place. So how do you use that kind of a system? The third thing is, then there should be an easier way to collaborate and communicate across releases across multiple groups. Okay, and the fourth thing is, the release manager. So when a release management process, you generally always have a release manager who oversees the entire release process. So how does the release manager get visibility on a project that is happening in a department that he is in no way connected to, but whatever they are doing affects his systems? How does he get that visibility? So we're going to look at how do we develop that dashboard or report using the tools that we have. Okay, before I jump back there and start my demo, any questions so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, so we will cover it to a certain extent, but I will address your question as I'm covering the demo. Okay. All right. So let me go back and switch my monitor. Okay, I'm supposed to hit that. Good. Okay, so what we're going to do is, first of all, start with what is the first requirement? We need a way to indicate, we need a place to manage the releases, right? So there is every release process should have like a release policy as to what needs to happen when, a release criteria. There should be a release calendar, one of the very, very key elements of a release process. You might be on a regular monthly cadence, quarterly cadence, or it might be all over the place, but there needs to be some kind of a defined release calendar that everybody can view and follow, right? So that is the first step. Right off the bat, again, I'm doing this entire demo on Project Online, so you can, and you'll see some of the advantages of doing it here, okay? So first thing we do is we create a simple SharePoint site that titled release management. You can make this SharePoint site as complicated as you need based on your requirements, but I kept it simple. So in the SharePoint site, you have obviously the documents if you have been using project sites. It's a very similar structure. So you can store all your release criteria, release policy, and procedures all here, okay? The next thing is you can also maintain what a release calendar is. So I'm going to define my release as having 4 different distinct steps: design, build, test, and release, okay? So what I did is for every, and I'm going to demo this using a quarterly release calendar. So I gave it a code, release code number, and put all 4 dates for each of the quarters. These are the target dates that everybody should meet to be able to make it to the release. If I have heard somebody, I'm going to borrow an example from somebody I know who described release process as being on a train, right? So once you get onto the train, you cannot leave, right? But to get onto the train, you need to get the ticket, right? So your ticket is going to be the adherence to these release dates, okay? So if you miss the train, let's say you are not adhering to these dates, and if you have not gotten on the train, you cannot get on to the same train. You need to get on to the next release. So these are some, I mean, if that example helps you, these are some ground rules you need to make. If your release process needs to work, you have to have these ground rules. Otherwise, and I have been guilty of this myself, we are supposed to follow a release process for our own implementations. And I've tried, begged, pleaded with our release manager because I missed the dates. I completely forgot about it, but they wouldn't budge. And that's probably why some of the things they do are very successful. So have some ground rules that would all be defined in your release policy. Okay, release criteria would be something. I mean, by the way, the documents I showed you are empty, but you would define it based on your requirements. Release criteria are something that would define why a project or a change would make it to the release or not. Okay, so anyway, I have defined these dates. These dates can be changed by the release manager. The release manager has full control over these dates. I mean, obviously, based on to the organizational policy. They can add more as we go. You can set up alerts. Obviously, if you have used SharePoint, you know that already. You can set up alerts so that you know if something changes, if everybody decides that release number 25 is going to change dates, you know that. Okay, so that's all SharePoint. So you got this, and then there is a reason I'm showing you this. We are going to use this data to build our report. Okay, the next thing we are going to do is try and cover the factor that not everybody is going to have the project schedule. They are going to have task lists, they are going to have mini schedules, minor projects all over the place. Okay, so to accommodate that, we have to do some basic setup. What we are going to do is, and I have done this already in the interest of time. So we are going to create a project level field called release calendar. So I created a lookup table for it so that it is easier for us to report. So the release calendar follows the same cycle as is defined in the previous SharePoint site I showed you. Same release coding number. It's year dot quarter number. That's the one I followed. You can define anything you want. Okay? So it can be time-based, it can be some milestone-based, whatever it is, it needs to be at a project level for our demo to work. Okay? So the advantage of doing this is, okay, so I created the release calendar. Okay. And the advantage of doing this is, this is a new thing in 2013. So you can check this box that says allow editing in SharePoint task list projects. How many of you are aware of task list projects in 2013? Okay. There is a very cool new feature in 2013. If you're not aware, maybe I should let me do it this way. So have you ever had any group of yours, if you're using Project Server, complain about having to build a schedule? The very look of that schedule page is like, no, we don't want to do this. I put in the work, dates change, I put in the dates, and we always train not to type in the dates, classic Microsoft project, and they don't like that. Have you heard that scenarios? So now what you can do, so let's say the alternative to that is to use a SharePoint task list. But the problem is, if you use a SharePoint task list in previous versions, that wouldn't show up in the resource consumption, right? So now what you can, there is a new feature called SharePoint task list project, where you can allow them to create, those kind of people to just create a SharePoint task list, assign resources. It will still show up in your resource consumption. And some of these project fields, you can say, okay, I need those kind of projects also to use the project level fields I'm creating. That's what the checkbox is allowing me to do. So level 1 of standardization, one project field for all kinds of work, satisfying one of our requirements, right? So I already created this. I associated that with the lookup table, release calendar. So that's done. The second thing I'm going to do is create a task level field called release cycle. Okay, I created a lookup table for that too. I'm a big fan of lookup tables just so that data is consistent. People can select instead of typing in build and design, but build and test. We don't want to give them free text. So I defined my 4 blocks of levels of release. So design, build. Can you guys see it up there? Okay, so okay, that's what I did. Okay, I just recently learned how to use the one of the utilities we have. Okay, so same thing, task level field. I created one more field just to use that lookup table, release cycle. It's a task level text field using lookup table. Okay, so that's done. We have not made any changes, so that's okay. All right, so now it is now here is the real scenario. That's all you need to do from a setup standpoint. Okay, how will this actually be used in reality? Okay, so let's say I'm a project manager light. Okay, let's say I'm wearing the hat of somebody who is forced to create projects. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I have some project types already set up. So let's say I pick the minor project. Okay, no plan, template, nothing. It's an open text. So I'm going to say test minor project conf demo. Okay. So you see the project level field that we created, it has been added to this PDP, so it is available for selection. I need one of these changes to actually happen in Q3. Okay, I'm going to hit save. So that creates the project. And what it will also do, it will create kind of a blank schedule, nothing new here. It's a simple functionality. Okay, there we go. So I have the schedule PDP, so create that one. Okay, so I'm going to quickly add my tasks. Task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. Okay, generally I try to make it auto schedule just so that we have some dates to work out of. So 20 days. Okay. So link them. And then you see how the release cycle, the task level field we created, allows you to mark it. Okay. So I'm going to mark each of these. So that's like my design task. That's my build task. Why am I tagging these? Because these are the dates I will pull into my report so that I can give release manager the visibility. Why do I have to do it this way? Are there other alternatives? Yes, there are many ways to do it, but this provides you the flexibility of this doesn't affect your schedule. I can have I put in like 4 tasks, but you can have 50 tasks, but you can just tag the 4 things that actually align to the release steps, right? So I don't have to go by task names. They don't have to be milestones. If they're milestones, great, if that is a good way to build a schedule, but you can't. I'm trying to address the point of the maturity standpoint in an organization. And to the question that came up earlier, the way I see it is, you could have one of these mini projects types created, maybe use a simple workflow to move them from Excel to Project Online, have them create projects. In fact, one of my friends actually used that workflow process to do exactly what you're doing. So just for the recording purposes, I'll repeat the question. The question was, you have a list of 500 release items that go in 500 releases with many changes going on. How do you track them in Project Server? So the way I see it is, you would create these projects using a mini minor project type, and then you can assign these values. They will all be pulled into reporting. At the same time, because there are already projects in the system, you can pull them into portfolio analysis, put some resource estimates, and do the entire cost resource analysis, which we covered yesterday's session. So that should solve your purpose. And there are many ways to convert your Excel level projects into actual system projects. Okay, so I do that. I'm going to just publish that one. Sure. Good question. So there can be milestones if you can force them to be milestones if your people who are building the schedules are good enough to make them milestones. So a lot of times what happens is, if you say, okay, here is a template, these need to be the milestones, don't touch it, how many times they did not touch it? I'm not talking about good skilled project managers or schedulers. I'm talking about people who are resource managers. I'm talking about people who are simple team leads who are tasked with this kind of stuff. Now they have to build the schedules, that kind of stuff. The lookup table allows them, that takes away our dependency on it being a milestone, accurately scheduled. It cannot, so let's say I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody said, okay, I'm going to release this into production on so-and-so date. Common sense would tell us that that needs to be a milestone. So go live deployment time or milestone, there should be a milestone attached to a task. That's how you would schedule it. But the way a normal person would do it is, they will have one task, put it like one or 2 days duration, how long it takes. Right there, your reporting will miss it because you're filtering for milestones, just because you have a duration on the task. So expand this scenario across 300, 400 projects. So would you be able to go back into each project and say, okay, do you really have you scheduled this as a milestone or not? I'm not saying milestone is a bad practice. I'm just accommodating for lack of it. Yes. So if your release process defines, okay, in my release process I have 6 steps. So there should be only 6 tasks in whatever size schedule you have that pertain to that. And then it may or may not be a milestone. Okay? If you can do the milestone thing, that's even better. Okay, so let's go back to that. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and close that. The same thing will work for any major project. Again, a major project, the project manager, when they are building the schedule, they don't really think of a release. They build their schedule, they have their stages, gates, milestones, all that kind of stuff. And the same concept applies where you can actually align a major project to the milestone. So I'm going to try and find a good major project to show. Okay, so here I have a strategic project. So let me actually use that. Come on, it's thinking. Okay, so I don't have a template, but you could have a template here. So I'm going to just come on, task, edit, and Microsoft project. Okay, so let's say now I am a project manager who really knows how to do stuff, but I have a huge template to work off. Okay, so it's a blank schedule, so I'm going to quickly put in some tasks. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, up. Okay, so under each stage, I could add more tasks. I could do a lot of stuff. Okay, same concept here. The task level field is available right here. So I would say, okay, stage 2 aligns to build, stage 1 aligns to design, that one doesn't align to anything, that one aligns to test, and that one aligns to release. I'm throwing an example. Your major project could actually have a template that goes across 500 tasks. So again, you should have only 4 tasks that align to this release process. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. I think I have covered this point enough. Okay, so when all said and done, everybody publishes. Think of this in real time. Okay, so people, you have set up this process. Everybody is just doing whatever you have aligned. That's all they need to do from their perspective. Then they keep working on it. Here is another lack of maturity scenario we are covering by using this process. We are not using baseline. Again, using baseline is a very good practice. It's one of the best practices, and it is also very convenient in 2013 because baselining is available on the web interface. But let me guarantee you, not everybody will do it. And unfortunately, it is not available to set up automatically without some custom coding and stuff like that. So you will always end up with projects that don't have a baseline. Okay. So anyway, right? So we covered that scenario also by using a task level field. How do we pull the whole thing together? What we are going to do is quickly build a report, which was one of our requirements, right? One out of 4. You provide visibility to the release manager. Okay. So I'm going to jump back to Excel. I'm going to. How many of you were at the keynote on Monday? Okay, you remember they showed you how you can connect to an OData data feed? How many of you went to one of the reporting sessions that happened yesterday? No, I did not do it. So another expert did it. So anyway, if you did not check it out, I don't have the session number. It's real world reporting in Project Server 2013. I recommend you to check it out. The reason I say that is because I'm going to use some of those concepts right here. In 2013, especially Project Online, most of the reporting is done through OData. Okay, if you're not familiar with what OData is, it's an open data protocol. The advantage is you can access any data without having to set up like OLAP cubes and stuff like that. In a Project Online environment, when they have to support multiple customers, OData is a much more secure way to access your own data. Okay, so I think that's enough introduction for OData. But it is very easy. So all you have to do is, I have something open here, but I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm going to start with a blank browser, and I'm going to access my online tenant. Okay, /PWA. Okay, so that's my site/PWA. Okay, so that's my PWA site. To start building your OData query, all you have to do is right here at the browser level. You first append underscore API. Okay, that tells that now you are querying, you are building your query string. That's all we need to know. Believe me, I'm not a developer. I'm a mechanical engineer by education. Okay, so I'm not showing you anything that I could not do being a non-developer. So just add project underscore API and add this thing. So we want project data. So if you just did that, it is going to give you a ton load of data as to what data is available for your projects. But this is not, this is not really telling me anything. So I'm going to add one more variable. I only want projects data. Okay. So now you see there's a lot more stuff here. But again, it seems like it is bringing in, like you can see project regular work, project finish, project currency. There's like a ton of stuff for all the data that is available for projects. It is great, but I don't want all this data. I only need few fields, right? So I'm going to filter for that. So you see how it is also already coming up. So I'm going to put those values. I need project ID, project name, release calendar, the project level field we created, project start date, finish date, and owner name. Okay, good enough? So I'm going to hit that. You see how now it only is bringing some of the data. Okay, so it would be nice if we can just take this and then call it a report, but obviously we cannot. So I'm going to just copy that entire string, and go to Excel from other data sources, click on OData data feed, and do that. Okay, so it's going to read the data. And it is going to build a table. So you see how it is trying to say, okay, I'm going to bring you the project data. Go through next. It is going to build that. So it says I already have it because I have run through this demo. Say yes. So it's going to give you the tabular data for this entire thing. Okay, so here is all our project data that we have in our system. Okay, for you it could be a lot more. This becomes more and more apparent. The usefulness of this becomes apparent when you have it like 500 projects, 600 projects. It's much faster to do it in Excel. Okay, so I'm going to just rename that sheet to projects. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is create another sheet. I'm going to do pretty much the same thing, except that this time I'm going to pull in the task level data. Okay, so in the interest of time, I have built that string right here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how it will look like just by pasting it here. So same thing, instead of after project data, until project data, everything is same. Instead of saying projects, I said tasks. I appended that because those are the only fields I need. You can bring any, if you don't append anything, it will give you entire task level data. Okay, so hit that. So you see that it is bringing in all the task level data. So again, not readable. I'm going to just paste that and say next. Okay, so I'm going to hit finish. Same thing, I already have it. Okay, so it brought all the task level data at the project ID level. Okay, so you see that across projects, things have been set up. Some have been classified as test. Some, you see, there are tasks that don't have anything classified, which is what you should expect, right? Not every task in your schedule is going to be tagged with one of these things. So now, here is what I want to do. If you are a release manager, what would you expect to do or expect? What would be a good report for a release manager? Exactly. So you should be able to see, for my release number, the release calendar, can I see what are the projected dates for each of these projects? How are they tracking to their level right now? Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to quickly query, do some Excel stuff. Again, nothing super complicated. Okay, I'm going to just use Power Pivot for this. So click on Manage. So it is going to open both of these tabs in a Power Pivot window. And all I'm going to do is click on Design, Insert Function, there is a new functionality. I shouldn't say new functionality. It's a new formula, I should say, formula value, lookup value. This kind of enhances your VLOOKUP, but because it does it for the entire column without you having to specify every single thing. So the syntax for that is I need the task finish date from this column for this project ID. So I need to search, but I want to search in this, match it up with this. Okay, and finally, I only want my design dates, right? Where task release cycle actually just says one.design. Okay, so that's the syntax. What am I doing? I am pulling in the task finish date for the tasks that match with my project ID, which have release cycle called design. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. So now you see how it pulled in all the values for each of that stuff. So what does that, and this is reflected in the other tab as well. So it's easier to do it here. So I'm going to call it design dates projected. Okay, so do make it format it a little bit just so that it is easier to look at. Okay, all right. So what is it? What is this telling me? For project conference demo 6, the project design projected target date is 7/31. Okay, so the release calendar is 2014-13. This is a decent enough date. For okay, let me take this example. Archival demo 2, right? It is targeted for Q1 of 2014. So you would assume the finish date would be when? End of quarter, right? March 31st. But the projected date is 5/16. So right there, you can see that this project is not going to make it. So because this is January, and you know that those dates are not matching up, you can probably go talk to that project manager and say, guys, you got to do something. Otherwise, you will not make this release. So that way, your release manager has more visibility. Okay, so we can extend this, but what I'm missing here is I would like some colors, some dashboard functionality, right? What I'm missing here is the target date. Okay, let's say I'm tracking my releases for next 5 years. I can, and maybe they're not all defined perfectly by quarter. And even if it is a quarter, I don't know what the design date is. I only know what the end release date is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring in another data source exactly the same way. Click on data from other data sources, OData data feed. But this time, remember the release calendar we set up in a SharePoint list? That's what we're going to bring in. Okay, so again, I have that query built so that I don't bore you to death with these details. Okay, I'm going to say finish. Say yes, done. Okay, so I got the entire list data. You can see that my design date for, if I sort this, actually my design date for Q1, the date I should be meeting, for me to be able to meet the subsequent dates is 1/15. If I go back, I'm like going to miss it. This should have been Q2 release, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more lookup. So go back to Power Pivot, go back to projects, and I'm going to add one more column. And I'm not going to do this for all 4 stuff. We will see the end result in just a minute. Okay, all right. So click on lookup value. So same function. I missed that. Okay. All right. So same thing we are going to do again. In the interest of time, I'm going to just copy paste this. So this is this functionality. Okay. So there we go. what I'm doing, I'm looking for the items that have I'm looking for the dates that are in the design column that match with the title, which is my release calendar value, with the release calendar number that I have here. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so I got all these dates. I'm going to call them, so these are rename, design, projected. Okay, and then I'm going to rename this column. And at this point, I think you are, this is all in Excel, so you should be pretty comfortable with all this stuff. Okay, so you can see that there is quite a discrepancy. Design projected, this one is going to miss that, this one is going to miss that. There are but this one is going to make it. So there are quite a number of projects that do make it, some projects that will not make it. Now we're just going to tie everything together. Okay, all I have to do is put some conditional formatting here. Come here, do conditional formatting, more rules, manage rules. I'm going to say, what is it, G2 is equal to G2 greater than H2. Okay, and I'm going to format it, fill it. Anytime my projected date is greater than the target date, I'm going to format it red. Okay, so just manage rules. Now I'm going to apply it for the entire column. Okay, apply. So you see how it is highlighting in red at the ones that are going to miss. I'm going to just add one more rule just to make it look a little bit pretty. Okay, so is equal to G2 less than or equal to H2, formatted green. Okay, and say okay. All right, same thing. I'm going to do the entire range. 14. Okay, so now this is a dynamic feed. So any time the release calendar is updated, if I change the date there, these things will change. Okay, so I'm not going to go through. We can do the same thing for build target date, this release target date, and testing target date. Again, I'll not go through every single thing. So I will show you the end result of building a dashboard for the resource release manager. That way, it will be more interesting. Okay, so go back. And you can actually, once you build it all in Excel, you can publish it back to the reports library. Okay, so there's my dashboard as a release manager. You can build something like this. Okay, so based on each release quarter, so click on that. So you see that there is only one project slated for that quarter, but that is going to miss all these dates. There is no date for test projected, which you could format it in a different color so that they can go back and figure it out. So if I do quarter 2, looks like everything is on track. Again, this is constantly updated. So every week, if you look at this dashboard, you'll be able to easily figure out whether the things are following or not. So these things are going to miss their release targets and stuff like that. So that's a simple dashboard that you can build right out of Excel. That's what I did. It's a complete out of Excel. Go ahead. Question? Yes. Yeah, it is based on publish. The OData is querying the reporting data out of the database tables. So every time you publish, yes, it refreshes. Okay. The other thing you can also do is build even more cooler dashboards. So you can build some like trend lines and stuff like that. Again, I have done this entire thing in Excel. Okay. So you can see that obviously this is the variances that are being calculated based off of difference between what the target versus projected is. So this variance is decreasing, which is good overall as a trend in your releases. But if you see the other charts, especially the build variance is increasing, at least the way the data is built right now. Same thing with release variance, but the test variance is again looks a little bit better. So then you can add slicers to this stuff, so you can filter based on each quarter. So let's pick Q2. There are a couple of projects there to show. So that will filter by projects, and you can drill down into project level. Okay. Now I don't know how much you use slicers in Excel, but I was able to do this entire thing in hour and a half. But the building block for this entire thing was making sure you have the values that are set up so that you can build these reports off. These are immensely powerful. We have built reports like this, which have helped the whole release management process improve by a large percentage. At the end of the day, to me, any project server implementation, any project process, all boils down to be able to look at data in a meaningful way and act on it. So what we have just seen is provided you a way of using project and project server to be able to do that. Okay. So if you want to be a little bit more cooler, gain some real good reputation, do this entire dashboard in a Power View. Okay. So how many of you actually used Power View before? Anybody? How many of you know about Power View? Okay. So it is. It was a Silverlight based application that you can just drag and drop stuff, just like Excel, but it provides much more interactive kind of a feel and look to this, like a flashy look. So I have set up, you can't, okay, so on the top I have all this quarter set up, so I'm going to pick that one. So I have built variances as a column chart. So you can see anything below 0 is good, anything above 0 is bad. So you can see that both release and test variances are looking bad right now. At the bottom, you are in the same screen, you are providing the target dates versus the projected dates, so you can actually look at it and say. So if I click on it, it should filter it out. Okay, so now because that is one project, it is launch new pens. It is showing only the launch new pens project data here. So it's a completely interactive. I just recently noticed this. This is probably another advantage of using Project Online. There is an HTML5 version that is available right now. So you can click on that. What does that mean to you? My guess, I have not explored this yet, but my guess is it will work on your iPad or any other device that can support HTML5. Silverlight is not supported by all applications, but so you have the same functionality there. So same thing, 2014 Q2. So it's a preview version looks like, but I'm sure it will be improved and you can work off of it. Okay. So Power View is really powerful in my opinion. There is more stuff that you can do, Power Query and stuff like that. I don't want to make this a reporting session, but what we went through is building the blocks for setting up your release process and moving on to actually reporting it and providing a release manager good visibility of. I only showed you 10 projects. In your mind, scale it up to 1,000 projects. Wouldn't a dashboard like that be useful? All right. So let me switch back. I think that's all I had. Let me switch back to my slide deck. Supposed to do that? Okay. Q&A. Any questions on what I have shown? Go ahead, ma'am. Mm-hmm. 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 That's what I called a multivariable equation back when I was doing my master's. So my question back to you would be, again, for the recording purposes, the question was if you don't have a regular cadence for your projects. There is no so the dates for the releases are decided based on the product life cycle and portfolio prioritization. The only question I would have back to you is, does the portfolio prioritization have a cadence?
It is starting to.
Okay.
We're at that level of maturity where we're starting to have a consistent prioritization of releases.
So I can think of two solutions. One, a quick and dirty solution, is you would simply add one more field, like I showed you, so at a task level, something like release number. So within one release cycle, you probably have release number 1, release number 2, release number 3, and you would maintain the target dates for that outside of this project server world, maybe in a SharePoint site, and then you can pull everything together into a report. Obviously, the long-term solution is what you are kind of doing is product development life cycle. So I would think there should be a good cadence for those releases as well. So eventually, if you can get there, then you can simplify your approach. But,
You recommend loading all of your releases in SharePoint, that there's a site where you maintain all of them.
Good question. So what I do recommend, I mean, your need is more than just tracking releases. Your need is they are all also part of your project prioritization. So first of all, for them that to happen, they need to be projects. Okay, so there need to be either a SharePoint task list project or a real project. So they need to be in the project server world, not just SharePoint. But since I'm also assuming you already have this maintained somewhere in an Excel sheet somewhere, there is a new functionality in 2013 where you can convert ideas to projects. So you can use that and simulate that to convert your Excel sheets into projects. But you have to maintain them as a project for you to be able to go to the next level of portfolio analysis and prioritization, so that you can put some resource estimates. And then at some point in your life cycle, you would hand it over to project manager and say, okay, manage this as a project for this release. Okay, and if there are, we also have done is if there are multiple small changes just at one application level, we have combined them all into what we call an operational plan or a utility project. You can name it anything you want, administrative project. So you could combine, but it still follows some guidelines in terms of cadence. So I could call it Q3 release for application so and so, and then dump all these changes into one. Still tag tasks, multiple tasks with my task level field, and then still pull them back into reporting. Okay, so everything doesn't have to be a single line project. Go ahead, sir.
What's different in your demonstration for on-premise?
Nothing. Nothing. Except for the Power View to work, there is some setup that needs to happen in the background. You can still do it in Excel. If you have Excel 2013, Power View comes by default. But for you to be able to publish it to SharePoint, there is extra setup that needs to be made. Project Online comes everything inbuilt. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it's plain old. I mean, actually, you can even do this in Project 2010. Any other questions? All right. So I think we are well ahead of our time. Okay. So some useful links. Some release management basics. If you're not a complete release manager, there is a ton of other links I went through. There are some very good books. I just didn't want to dump all of them here. If you are looking for some good books, let me know. I can recommend those. There is obviously querying OData feeds for Project Server 2013 reporting. That's actually, I said it yesterday. I think Microsoft has done a real good job of documenting OData and how you can query it. There is a lot of blog posts out there that if you want to follow, many experts have blogged about this. So if you are slowly building reports, you can use this. If you are going on Project Online or going to be on Project Online, OData is a must. Somebody in your organization has to be an OData guy. Okay, and then the final thing, I used the third option to pull the data from the SharePoint list. That's why I include that link. So it's not complicated. It's very simple, same building a HTML query and pulling it in. All right, so fill out evaluations, good or bad, for you found it useful or not, let us know. So that depending on that, otherwise I will come back next year and talk about the exact same thing again. I'll just say 2015 version. Okay, so just let me know. Honest feedback appreciated, and looks like you all can also win prizes. And if you give me good feedback, I'll recommend. I'm just kidding. I have no influence over whatsoever. All right, thanks everyone. I gave you back 15 minutes, I guess. So.